Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Dave Adams Takawingawa, ko Koko Te Moanga, ko Waitarere Te Moana, no Te Whanganui Aotearoa Aho, tēnā koutou katoa. The responsibility of tomorrow, the challenge of thinking about the future. Tough gig. Why? Because we are wired either to ignore tomorrow or to give it too little weight in the scheme of things. When it comes to trade-offs between the things that matter today and the things that are going to matter in the future, between the things that need to be done today for today and the things that need to be done today for tomorrow, there's always a tendency to focus on the present. We need to change this. One of the primary reasons we need to think about tomorrow is to help us change course towards different outcomes. Note the words of playwright and poet Bertolt Brecht. Because things are the way they are, things will not stay the way they are. Because things are the way they are, things will not stay the way they are. We need to consider possible futures so we are not captured by them. We can't assume to stay on a fixed course and that things will continue as they are. For we know the world is changing rapidly. We have heard that through previous speakers and you'll hear it again soon from Professor Gluckman. Events of the past 12 months have shown us how complex and fast-moving our world is. We have known for a while that as a society we face some big challenges. Take your pick from a list that includes climate change, the fourth industrial revolution, an ageing population, Māori aside, urbanisation, loneliness, the rise of populism, athlete activism. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought these into stark relief while also presenting us with new challenges. To remain relevant, we must understand the changes that are coming and be ready to respond, or better still, take action and make decisions now to shape the future that we desire. In the last year, many of you participated in and helped with an inquiry we undertook as a sector to better understand and shape the future that is coming at us. I hope you've seen the reports and papers produced by this work. As a matter of fact, can I ask for a show of hands? Who has actually seen these reports? If you can just raise your hand. Excellent, excellent. For those of you who have not, you'll find them all on the Sport New Zealand website. The Futures work sought to break the short to medium term cause and effect approach so many of us have grown up thinking is strategic planning. Because now more than ever, we felt the need to challenge this paradigm, to do something different. And so the goal was to open our thinking, challenge our mindsets and beliefs, give voice to ideas and people who were not being heard, and imagine what could be possible. When looking at the future, it's easy to get excited about identifying all the possible developments, changes, advances and degradation to technology, society, people, the environment. And indeed we did this through a number of environmental scans. These scans highlighted amazing and potentially exponential development with things like genetic engineering, the rise of virtual sport, workforce skill shortages, geopolitical shifts, changing societal norms and personal identities, climate issues and the like. From these scans, those involved built scenarios and possible futures, imagining how these trends and events could lead to different outcomes, and painted rich pictures of how this might be experienced by people in the future. But I don't want to talk about these things. It's available in the reports on the Sport New Zealand website. I do want to talk about how hard and challenging futures work is to participate in and hold. One of the common bits of feedback from people involved in the process was how it raised questions that are difficult to open up and discuss, let alone answer, and that succumb to the strong gravitational pullback to old cause and effect ways of strategic thinking. We strive to simplify where there are no simple answers and clamber for conclusion and direction over curiosity and understanding. We leap into action when we would be better served by listening to a range of perspectives. The most common question you hear when you tell someone you're doing futures work is something like, well, that's great, so what's going to happen? It's as if people expect you to be able to look up from your crystal ball, ready to tell them which horse to back. Seldom do you hear the question, should I be backing horses at all? This is not new news to you. You all know that the future is something we cannot predict. As the pandemic reminded us last year, what will happen is unknowable and uncontrollable. However, just saying this is often not well received. Fluffy, conceptual, abstract, and other less flattering words of feedback. For those of us involved, this work has at times been challenging. It is easy to feel despondent. Some of the best thinkers in the sector together for days and days, and yet still not able to say when auto exercise, anti-obesity medication will be available, gender fluidity will solidify, or the future of the Olympic movement will be clear, let alone the location of the next America's Cup. So apologies in advance. And talking about futures today, I will not be sharing any specific details about what is going to happen. Shortly you'll hear from Professor Gluckman, who may do a better job in this space. And of course, you can read about possible futures on the Sport New Zealand website. Instead, I want to highlight one area of this work that I think is very important, one that can be tricky and uncomfortable, and therefore, in so doing, I offer this talk as a provocation, a challenge to you and us as leaders to think about, talk about, and make sense of the future differently from how we have in the past. I want to build this around the consensus those who did this work formed on what we can control and what we can use to guide us looking forward despite all the uncertainty, volatility, ambiguity and change. This is what we want to stand for, the values we want to be inherent in how we relate, decide, implement and work as a wider community in the future. We refer to this as our preferred future. It emerged from broad collaboration with you and represents a consensus about what we feel matters most to New Zealanders, a shared view about a way forward. It is explicit about the things we value and should not take for granted, simplified down to 5 areas, 5 PO, signposts for the future. As many of you will have seen, they are profoundly ethical, not predictions or bets, but choices and decisions about who we are and want to be as a society. Again, in the context of we cannot know the future, but we can choose how we want to be and respond to what comes at us. The future painted is too rich to do it justice here, but in summary, it includes building a just society that is inclusive, equitable and safe, empowering communities and devolving decision-making to community providers, honouring Te Tiriti, working in genuine partnership with Māori, improving the relationship of people and communities with their environment, promoting the value physical activity brings to our well-being and our nation's identity as New Zealanders. I know not all of you will have seen the detail around the characteristics of the preferred future, but can I take a quick poll? Raise your hand if you would say at a glance that you endorse and support the aspirations as outlined in the characteristics of the preferred future. Do you actually broadly agree with working toward a just society, empowered communities, working in genuine partnership, improved relationship with the environment and promoting the value of physical activity? Raise your hand if you broadly agree with that. Thank you. This is where the provocation begins. Because if, like me, you raise your hand, then you must also feel we should be having a conversation about whether the background narratives that we are telling ourselves that inform our actions and views are serving us well. A really challenged narrative, often used to justify decisions and actions, is how performance on the world stage inspires a nation to do great things in the physical activity space. As we look to the preferred future, you might ask, is this based on research, results and facts, or opinion, and a self-serving one at that? Does it represent all and is it inclusive? If you raise your hand, then you might also feel we should be having a conversation about an underlying narrative that suggests that everyone has the opportunity to start afresh from the same position and to maximise their opportunity. The weakness in this thinking quickly became apparent in this work as Māori responded strongly against the notion that we are all standing in the same position. The perspective of Māori was clear. Never mind the preferred future painted somewhere in the distance. Māori simply aspire to what non-Māori have now. If you raised your hand, then you must also feel we should have a conversation about the metaphors and language we employ. For example, how we punch above our weight. Whether we want a narrative based on a boxing metaphor and grounded in a competitive mindset in the future, if our role is to support the development of wider New Zealand society, should we be lauding competition mindsets and paradigms that reward supreme champions, or instead celebrate activity that encourages cross-team collaboration? If you raised your hand, then you must feel we should be having a conversation about how empowering communities and devolving decision-making means some of those with power now have to give it away to others, something most of us do not like doing. Younger participants, and women in particular, suggested that as a sector, we hold the view that everyone is happy with the current structure, and yet the sector is predominantly aligned to certain privileged sports and members of society, the people whom it currently serves well. The challenge offered was to move from a monolithic culture to a more diverse space where multiple voices and activities can feel accommodated and heard. If you raised your hand, then you must also feel we should be having a conversation about how this room may need to look different at this event next year. I'm talking about the people in it, not the carpet and wallpaper. Who of us will move aside to make way for new and different perspectives, voices and views? And what will those of us that return have to learn, change and let go of if we are to fit into and contribute to a more diverse, vibrant and eclectic world that we envisage? If you raised your hand, then you must also feel we should be having a conversation about how, in a sector so steeped in the history of teamwork, that we operate in such a siloed manner. What are the steps we need to take to build trust and collaboration? What is our ability to respond and change at a pace and scale required to break free from the gravity of the status quo? If you raised your hand, then you must also feel we should be having a conversation about how government policy and trends in global health are increasingly suggesting a focus on well-being rather than illness, wellness rather than illness, and how, although there is a real opportunity for us to assist by providing an array of activities for individuals, it also raises uncomfortable questions, such as why so many of our measures are in decline, falling, heading in the wrong direction: physical activity levels, accessibility, equality of opportunity. And whether we can achieve this sort of shift without removing the risk dimensions from codes that potentially compromise the long-term health of participants through things like head injury. And the extent to which organisation structures that are effectively driven the sports activities of the past are now proving a hindrance to the development of future active recreation. If you raised your hand, then you must also feel we should be having a conversation about climate change and the Commission's recent advice to government regarding its increased concern over international air travel and its implications for international events, and about the use of water to maintain a local pitch in an increasingly drought-affected region, and about how we're going to manage in a future environment that will make playing sport far less predictable than it has in the past, how we will retain the social licence to operate in the context of a wider community that is itself grappling with this issue and increasingly keen to see every part of society working towards mitigating the fast emerging problems. Pressing, urgent, tricky and uncomfortable questions that often elicit emotional reactions and make us feel vulnerable and exposed. Perhaps it is no wonder we all fall back into asking for concrete recommendations and predictions rather than deal with dilemmas of such magnitude. But voices in the futures process told us that to show leadership is to face into them, not to delay or avoid, to be comfortable raising questions and exploring them rather than feeling the need to deliver answers. As author Justine Garda states, an answer is always the part of the road that is behind you. Only questions point to the future. Thus, you might say that the future's work is not fluffy at all. In fact, what it asks of us is clear, present and challenging, that despite all the uncertainty, volatility, ambiguity and change around us, knowing what we stand for, The values that we want to be built into how we relate, decide, implement and work as a wider community give us plenty we can attend to, do and stand for right now. However, Nora Bateson, well-regarded futurist and philosopher, notes, the system can't change the system. The rules of the game do not include changing the rules of the game. Life does that. And so I leave you with this final question. As leaders in our system, can we, should we and will we change our system in line with the preferred future, or will we wait and let life do it to us? Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.